Gabby, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Well, I'm fine, but not much was going on. I can tell you that much.
You
With
I
me,
know
getting
you're
anyway.
bored?
watching the game.
You
Yeah,
getting
I know
bored,
you're watching
Bruce,
the
or
game
what do you
though, eh?
do with your days?
Well, you know what? I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I just got back from the gym, uh,
Not a boy.
Okay.
and but the rest of the day, I'll go watch our. I got a junior team here in Hershey. I'll go watch them practice at 1 o'clock today, and then I'll come back and I'll get ready to watch the games tonight and see how it goes.
Did you happen to check out last night's slate, Gabby?
Yeah, I watched most of the games. I mean, I watched mostly the Ranger game. I really get intrigued. I think they're a really good hockey club, and I wanted to see if Calgary they've got to step it up in my mind to make the playoffs, let alone be the juggernaut they were last year. So I mean, they're always interesting to watch, and I think they're starting to step it up a little bit. Markstrom's starting to play a lot better, and so I like watching that game. And then I watched Minnesota and Arizona at the end before I went to bed. But other than that, just flipped back and forth between the other games.
What do you think of the Horvat fit with the Islanders? Obviously, they get the victory, but they're really struggling to score goals right now, Gabby. I was seeing they've scored two or less in 8 straight and 13 of 14. I don't know how you do that.
I don't either. I read that because that was another game I was paying attention to just to watch Bo. But I mean, uh, that's pretty hard to do. And I mean, if you look at their players, they got some pretty good players there. Other Pavelski, I used to play when I was in Anaheim and watched him a lot. Um, that Bo's probably as good a tipper in front of the net on the power play, on the shot passes, and everything else as anybody in the league. And I think got 11 or 12 shot tip goals. I mean, when Dobson's taking shots from the point, it just gives you that added uh, advantage there. And he's really good in the bumper position, and he's got such a great release. So I think it should help the Islanders score some more goals. But if you watch the game, even when they had the 2-1 lead, you watch every team when they pull the goalie, everybody goes for the empty net. The Islanders were just looking to dump the puck out at the red line. They weren't going for the empty net. So I mean, that's just the mindset that they've got, I think, going forward.
Rosie?
Yeah, just protect and play defense first. Bruce, we appreciate you coming on, man. I know you've had a lot of media, asks of you lately, but I went a little bit deep in your hockey DB and kind of geeked out a little bit there a few days ago. And I mean, if you go back to your Marlboro days, Bruce, you've been you've been involved very much so in a high level of hockey for 50 years now. And I mean, as a Toronto boy, to grow up where you did and to play for the Maple Leafs and to have the playing career that you did, and then just to step into coaching the way you did and to, eclipse even your playing career as far as amount of years and time in the NHL with coaching, it's really impressive to me. I don't think you could scour Toronto and find a guy with more experience than you do. And I wanted to pick your brain about kind of that mid to late 70s, early 80s when you were playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think everyone would kind of like to hear, if you go back to that, what was the culture like on that team? What was it like to play for the Maple Leafs in Toronto? The ownership, who was on your team? Can you give us a little insight of being on the Maple Leafs during that era?
Well, yeah, thanks, Jay. The the best years were the 78, 79 Leafs, and maybe 77, 78 when Roger Nielsen took over. Um, the culture was, I mean, it was a pretty serious time in Leaf hockey, and the biggest problem was that the Montreal Canadiens were in the same league. And they probably had, the 77 Canadiens, maybe the greatest team of all time.
Yeah.
But Leafs were really good back then, and I mean they were led obviously by Daryl Sittler, and who still was to me is an amazing captain. Um, and I'll give you an example of what a good captain will do here. Is I remember being called up that year, and I was actually going pretty good. I think I had like 23 points in 25 games or something like that, and I was starting to think I was a pretty good player at that point, and I would be one of the last guys on the ice for practice, one of the first guys to leave. And I remember leaving early one day. or as soon as practice was over, going off and come running after me. It was Daryl grabbed me by the throat and, or the jersey, and put me up against the wall. And he said, listen, he says, I'm the best player on the team. I'm the first one on and the last one off. You're never, ever going to get better if you don't stay on and work on things after practice. And I just looked at him and I was in like shock, but it stayed with me and resonated with me the rest of my life. And I don't think I was ever the last one off, or I think probably the first one on ever since that day. But I mean, that's what the kind of locker room he had. I mean, you add Dan Maloney to that, who was the same, you came from Detroit, was the captain of the Red Wings, and you had the Tiger Williamses and the Lanny McDonalds and the Boreas Salmings. I mean, it was a really tight team, and I mean, we had to be tight the one year that we beat the Islanders in 7 games, but then again you run into the Montreal Canadiens, and I think it was very similar to a Leaf team of today's era, whereas in the playoffs you run into a team you're a really good team, but you run into a great team, and I think that's what it was like back then. I mean, I could never stick there, but I mean, for any length of team, the '78 team, I think I was there the whole year, but I sat out half the time myself. But that was the most fun I'd had in hockey, playing with the Leafs for that whole year.
So you coach against this Leafs team, as you mentioned earlier on this season. What do you make of this current edition of the team, and do you think they have a legit shot this year?
I really do. I mean, to me, they're a top 5 team in the NHL, and um, and I mean, I think their goaltending is a lot better this year. I think they play a way more of a defensive game. I mean, if you look in the past few years, it was run and gun, and they let their top 6 just score. And but I think if you look at them now, they're in the top 10 defensively in the league, and that's what you have to be. You have to be. You look at the best defensive teams, and they're the teams that are up the top. And I think they've got a, I mean, I think Sheldon's done a great job of really sort of saying, okay, this might be, we could tweak this here and tweak that there, and this will become a better team. And I think they have. And I think they'll be a really tough out in the playoffs. But unfortunately, I mean, as you guys were talking before I came on, I mean, in the first round, it's going to be 2 of the best teams in the NHL going at it. And I have my own thoughts, by the way, on on the the playoffs and the formats, just like
Can we
Sydney
hear
does. But I
that?
mean, yeah, I'd love it. I mean, telling everybody who I think, like, I mean, there's 2 things that hockey keeps wanting is more revenue, and and they got to reward teams for being the best. And I look at baseball. They have a one game playoff, okay,
Yeah.
and but the thing with that one game playoff is they have to use their best pitcher. So when they start the next round, I mean, they're starting at a disadvantage because they usually
Yeah.
don't have their best pitcher pitching until maybe game 4 of the playoffs, and it's only a 3 out of 5. And the same thing with basketball is if you look at there's a play-in game, and that team usually plays against a top seed and has very little chance. Matter of fact, they've never won that play-in game. A 16 seed has never beat a 1. So I mean, and I agree with you that the season is such a grind. There has to be a better reward for the teams that end up in first place. And I would think, like, if you had a 2 out of 3 series, and for the 8th place and the 9th place team, and then they've got to start right away against the top team in the division with a day off, and they don't have that time to scout them or prepare for them. That gives the number 1 seed an advantage. But I think they've earned it over 6 months. They've
Yeah.
earned an advantage, not because if you look at home ice doesn't even mean that much anymore. Um, I've been
Yeah.
fortunate or unfortunate to win 8 division titles, and every time we've lost, it's been in a game 7, and we've been the home team. And
Yeah.
so it's not that much. You need a more of an advantage, almost like it was in the early '80s when one played 16 in the playoffs. But I mean, that's I think
Hmm.
something should give where the the top seed has more of an advantage over the bottom seed. And Toronto versus Tampa, there's not much difference in either one. And
Mm-hmm.
one team that could win the Stanley Cup is going to be out in the first round.
It's going to
Exactly.
go
It seems
7.
like
Yeah.
there's too many good teams that are going to be out in the first round because someone has to win. And you know as well as anybody, Bruce, like that grind of the regular season, my God, are you telling me you're not going to give any cadence to that? You're not going to reward anything for someone that puts together everything that you have to do to get to the top of the barrel in a regular season NHL season? It's there's not enough reward for it. And again, you can be the guy that the team that kind of doesn't get it done, and you're kind of well matched against your first round opponent. It's not really fair, and it's not really why we play those 82 games, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it's an anomaly with the Leafs in Tampa, but I mean, uh,
Yeah.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, um, teams are divisions are they're like in the Pacific Division, for example. There's 3 teams that are within 1 point of each other, and they've got to battle all the way to the wire. But the Toronto
Totally.
Tampa thing, like you said, has been decided since Christmas, basically, and now they just got to maintain and not get hurt and keep
Yeah.
up with the Joneses, stay in their position. So that's who they know they're going to play. And sometimes I would think that it might be tough to mentally just keep when they know where they're already set up.
So, Gabby, we're less than a month away now from the trade deadline. I was just curious, as somebody who's a head coach in this league, what type of role the head coach has in the process of sort of deliberating upon what players to target, which what players not to, and also along those lines, what do you think the Leafs should look at adding between now and the deadline?
Um, Well, I think the head coach depends on who the GM is, quite frankly, as to what kind of role you play in. But I would think any good coach and good GM relationship, they would be doing a lot of talking on a daily basis, and they would know what they need to target, what the weakness is on their team, and where we could go. And I mean, but it's a tough line because if you've got a really good team, you really got to worry about chemistry, which is an awful lot too. So you don't want to upset the apple cart. So there's a lot of talking
Mhm.
going on. That's why they start talking trades in October and November, but it doesn't get done till March. Because there's a lot of things that go into into these trades. But I mean, I think a good GM and a good coach, they find out what they need. They try to identify it over the other 31 teams and see if they can't get it done. Um, as far as the Leafs are concerned, I mean, they've improved the goaltending. Their defensive game is great. They've got they got still some of the most dynamic and best offensive players in the league. I mean, and even they've taken an extra step, quite frankly, with the year Nylander's having. I mean, he's jumped right into the Marner Matthews to me
Yeah.
conversation as to who's the best in that team. So, but what wins? It's like in baseball, it's pitching, and uh, in hockey, it's goaltending and defense in the end. And you can never not need another great defenseman. Giordano's having a really good year, but he's almost 40 years old. And when you're thinking about playing into June, you gotta wonder how much he's going to have left in the tank. Brody's getting older. I don't know if Muzzin will be back at all. So I mean, to me, they could always use another really good player. Who it would be, I don't know. But their forward lines seem really good. They score an awful lot of goals when they want to. But I think they could use somebody to help Morgan Riley on the power play a little bit, and also be a good shutdown guy. So if I was to focus on something, it would be a defenseman.
So, Bruce, knowing what you know with your history, I was when you agreed to come on the show, a guy, Luke Shen, texted me and said, "Hey, Bruce is a beauty. Tell him I said hi." Knowing what you know about him so intimately, do you think he'd be a good fit to go back to Toronto? I mean, I can't say enough about the way that guy has kept himself in the league and adapted to the new style of play and become like that veteran physical presence that's got leadership qualities as well.
Well, now he's a scoring machine. He got a goal and assist last night. So
There you go.
um, listen, Luke Luke was one of my favorite players, and I don't know what the plans are with him, but he would be a welcome addition to any team. I think there's a
Yeah.
reason Tampa wanted him um, for even last year. They were looking for him, and it wasn't nothing was done. But Luke Shen is going to be a guy that's wanted by a lot of teams. His attitude is perfect.
Yeah.
His work ethic is perfect. So I mean, he's going to be a wanted guy. I don't know
Yeah,
if he wants to move him, but he's going to be a wanted guy.
for sure.
I was just going to ask you to wrap. So I put out a funny tweet I thought last week about you potentially going to the TNT panel. What's next for you? Would you be open to media again? And if TNT came calling, would you answer that call, Gabby?
Oh, I mean, I'll answer any call from hockey people on work. So that's not a question. I mean, I you know what? It's retirement or anything like that has never been really something that I ever want to think of. I mean, I was home 2 days when my wife was phoning my agent, say, "Get him out of the house." I think I'm going to start going back to the NHL Network again, which I did when I wasn't working time. And then after that, what happens? I mean, I always still want to get in the game. I still always have the passion for it. So you never know what's going to happen, but hopefully something good happens down the road. Jay was in Norfolk when I was in at the time. You didn't come to camp, so I didn't really. Uh, it was during the lockout because I went down to North to watch you guys a couple times, so I remember that. So you did well down there,
Yeah, I
and
remember you,
then
Bruce. I had signed late to find somewhere to play during the lockout, and wasn't sure what was going to happen when the league started up again. I ended up getting moved to Philadelphia. But I remember a time, I don't remember what rink we were playing in, but I'd been in a couple of fights the night before, and my face had a bunch of jersey burn on it. I was all scraped up, and I just remember you coming up the stairs from the bottom of the glass there, and I was sitting watching something. I don't know where we were. We might have been in Hershey or something. And you'd come up, and I was like, "Oh, there's Bruce. That's cool." And you sat down right beside me, and you started looking at my face, and you were analyzing the fight that I was in. You must have watched it on YouTube, and you were going over, "Oh, he was doing this jersey jab shit," and that's how much it scrapes you up. Those jerseys need to be changed. They mark you up too much and stuff like that. And I was just in shock that like you were that dialed in to know some pigeon playing in your minor league team and to actually look at his fight that he had got in. And from that day on, I knew I was like, that guy's a player's guy. That guy's a people's guy. So we definitely appreciate that you came on to our show today and gave us your insight, Bruce.
oh, it was my pleasure. Anything for Nick, you know.
Uh,
But I mean, it's all good. I'm really happy to do it, and anytime I can talk about the Leafs, I mean, uh, once I'm not working, they're my favorite team again, so it's all good, and hope they succeed this year.